John, thank you for coming and doing this. I know it's a little crazy hectic at Shoptalk, and so appreciate you taking the time. Maybe just to start, to share a little bit about yourself and what it is that you do.
Yeah, so I lead the e-commerce, digital, social, and digital retailer teams across the house of brands for Jack Links, and we are a protein snacking company. People know us mostly for the flagship of Jack Links, right, and the Sasquatch character. But we really are a house of brands. We got four with 3 emerging brands now, really focused in the meat snacking space, but really expanding in towards protein in general from a perspective.
Got it. And what are the other? Are they all in? I guess Jack Links is beef, right?
Actually multiple proteins now. So we are beef, chicken, pork, turkey, all of those. Plus now we've got some products that are playing into the plant base. So we've got a beef and a mushroom product that's in market and starting to peak in.
More as a personal question for me. Is cricket protein like real? Like, is that like actually a trend or too early?
Globally, I think it is. I think if you're in either a flavor foodie space or there's a term under Golden Island that we use called snackatarian.
Okay.
I think if you're kind of a snackatarian, like you're open to experiencing like global flavors, I think you're probably into that space. It's the Anthony Bourdain, it's the odd food side of the world that you get.
We talked to some investors about this. I think it's going to be the next big thing. I'm like, I don't know. Like, the idea of eating insects feels like a subset of the world that gets super excited to eat it. So we'll see. One of the questions I had is just around e-commerce for Jack Links, and maybe it's different for each of the brands. Is when you think about e-commerce, is it direct to consumer, like sort of the Shopify drive to your site, or is it more of retail e-commerce like Amazon, Walmart, Instacart, etc.?
Yeah, it's really all of it. And from a traditional organization perspective, we've got our commercial teams that serve through Walmart, Target, and Walmart.com, Target.com. So a unified customer approach between in-store, click, collect, and then the ship to home direct D2C side. So yes, we are serving our consumers through that structure. And then also yes, for D2C, between all brands. So, of course, as you said, it's a different approach between flagship and emerging and different purposes, but we do extend it.
Which of the channels gets you most excited? I feel like what I've been hearing from different brand leaders is, Amazon was growing great. Feels like profitability is harder and harder on Amazon, and people are looking more at Walmart. It's interesting. Walmart's brought a lot of ex-Instacart people over to their leadership, and those are ex-Amazon people, and I'm just curious, like, how are you thinking about, like, what channels get you excited as you think about growth?
So probably still direct to consumer, and when I say direct to consumer to define, because I think people say a lot of things about direct to consumer, and it really is brand owned, purchased directly from us, shipped directly from us, or a 3PL to consumer. And I've been in digital e-commerce for 20 years, and I started my journey on D2C, so maybe that's part of my DNA.
Right.
But the industry growth is coming from digital grocery, from household penetration, from bringing consumers in. Digital grocery, so a Walmart click and collect is probably a faster growing segment than an Amazon is now.
Right.
But you think about brand power and direct consumer, and I suspect a lot of my peers would say the same thing. It's about, at the end of the day, what do you know about your consumer and what data do you have in a first party, or of course the buzz term is zero party data. When you have that's power up now, and you bring that into a Walmart Connect media side, you get to programmatic, and you go through Trade Desk, and you're doing audience sampling. The most powerful data we always will have is direct to consumer. Now the other side of that is the brand connection to consumer. You can always have the most fun. So my teams also lead digital shelf and retailer media. And so now we've built that purposely as an ecosystem. We own direct to consumer, but we also own that retail media. And we say we're building compelling and consistent brand experiences across. And your own direct consumer or website is always the most powerful place. We can play the commercials. We can get into topics. And Jack Links is a really sort of a reverent brand at the end of the day. That you can have media plays really differently.
That's smart. So more on Shoptalk. I'm curious, any interesting takeaways over the last, I guess, day or two so far that's getting you excited?
Yeah, from a theming perspective, and over dinner and happy hour the last 2 days already, I think I'm hearing a lot of the same things, even at these table talks and smaller meetings, is data. Everyone's talking about data, and it feels like we've been talking about data for, again, 20 years, but it's data. ChatGPT and AI is a hot topic I think people are touching on. And then a connected commerce experience. And I don't know what point we get away from talking about e-commerce, and people are starting to say just commerce. And that'll be it. So I think those three themes have been really predominant throughout the sessions.
Yeah, interesting. On ChatGPT, where do you feel like it's at for yourself? Is it still, hey, I'm trying to figure it out, or I found some applications, or I've tried, but it's a piece of crap?
Yeah, we are playing with it from a brand. Personally, I think it's really interesting, but again, it's a tool, right? And I think about it in terms of either if you're a writer, a digital marketer, or if you're in analytics, you've always had these platform tools, and GPT to me is another one. You have to have a human behind the scenes driving purpose with that tool. Now, I'm playing with it. It does create some really interesting things. I've got an intern on our content marketing side that writes blogs, and and she's using that tool because she'll write in the topic outline and use that as a jumping off point. Where can we go with that? And I think GPT-4 is interesting. And again, I think from a tool perspective, if you're a casual observer, you may not know GPT was not originally connected to the internet, right? It was indexed through 2021. It's not current. But now where does it go once it starts to know more and is taught? And I mean, we could probably talk about this all day long, but you really bleed in between artificial intelligence and machine learning. I'm not sure a lot of marketers even understand the difference between those two things.
Yeah, I agree. I also think it's going to hopefully be a good lever from a talent standpoint, in that you don't need to worry about hiring in the same way. I don't think it eliminates human beings, to your point earlier, that you still need, we were talking about this earlier at dinner last night as well. Like, it's like, you still need proper inputs, right? You still need to understand, what to feed into the machine to know if the output is good or bad. And so, it becomes more around creativity and being more of an editor versus, the writer of everything, right? So
for sure,
it's going to get super interesting.
I've heard several people say it, and I agree. Is AI going to replace your job? No, but the person who understands how to use AI will replace you.
Right. Exactly. There was an investor we were speaking to at SoftBank who was talking about kids who are getting penalized for using, ChatGPT to do their homework, and his view is, look, don't fight it. Instead, embrace it, because it's inevitable, and see what kids are going to be able to do with it, right? And sort of the analogy of, like, are you not going to give your child a calculator and to use like an abacus? Right. And so anyway, it's definitely gonna get interesting. Any things that you feel like you can immediately take back to the office and your team and say, look, this is stuff we've got action on right away?
Yeah, probably two things specifically. One is the consumer and customer focus, right? Of those three topics, of data and personalization, we say within that, and AI, and then that connected experience is one of the things I think is sort of a gap that people are not talking about as much, is what is the consumer, in putting the consumer or customer at the heart still. And I think, especially on the digital side, we move so quickly that it's more of the mantra that to bring back is step one. Hey guys, as we're exploring these tools, as my writer's looking at GPT and using that, don't lose sight of the consumer and what they want. Right. And that's philosophy, that's mantra. But these conferences, I think from an inspiration perspective, I think we all come here as a part of that to get inspired, to bring those big mantras and philosophies back. So that's probably the first thing. Second one, and it was interesting from a topic and as much as a deep dive as anybody goes here in the Google session that did talk about AI, machine learning, and generative AI. They really simplified it, probably because you can't say as much as you want to. But the slides that Google brought in talking about Bard and some of their tools was really to get back to baby steps. Back in technology, when you think about, wow, there's broad applications. Well, let's boil that down to what really is actionable. So let's come back to our D2C site, and let's think about our recommendation engines. And let's think about search and browse specifically, because we do things like recommendation, and we do take keyword search and redirect them to the appropriate places.
Right.
But how do you start to layer back on that personalization with new AI tools? And I think for us, that's the second thing that we'll be looking at is, great, we've been playing, but how do we get really back to the consumer?
Right. That makes sense. I mean, it's such a great point around there's so much tech out there, and it's at the end of the day, what we're solving for is the basic same thing.
It
right?
is.
And it's easy to forget as you go through
the
process. Anything else that you think is worthy of mentioning as you've gone through the show? Or
I do think, in Levi Strauss, when they presented through on the keynote, I think it's a powerful thing. One of the things they talked about is mental health awareness. And I think even with Pinterest, they talk through that as a platform. And I think in a forum like this, where you've got marketers and you've got brand people, to think about the experiences we're creating and the responsibility that we have with people. I don't know how many of the attendees are interested in that as a topic. But even thinking through back to the consumer, right, of what experiences are we creating? What do they want from us? And are you creating an experience that might have a negative impact, even if that's not your intent? And is big tech going to hop on that trend? Don't know. But you've got a 150-year-old company like Levi's taking social stands in a reasonable kind of way, thinking about the consumer journey, and then you've got somebody like that Pinterest who's developing forward. I think for everybody in the field is a good thing to think about our responsibility there.
I think that's a really it's a tough one to figure out how you deal with that as a brand and the responsibility that you have. But certainly as an individual, I mean, when you think about mental health and you think about the impact that, going on social media and things of like FOMO and seeing other, like it impacts all of us, right? And brands have massive impact in these subtle ways, right? And it's a great question, because I think we all feel it, are impacted by it personally, right? And then the question is just, well, as people who are behind brands, like, what can we do, and what's the best role we can play?
It is, the power of, I think, even when you start to commercialize it too, you can do well by doing good. I've heard people talk about, Amanda Brinkman, who's a marketer, talks about this a lot too. And just my formal background was in psychology, psychiatry. And there's a field called positive psychology. It talks about how we focus on what's going well with people and not what's not going well, right? We so often focus on dysfunction. If you commercialize that, bring it to something like the digital shelf now, consumers want to be delighted. We want to be delighted. We want to feel good about the things we're doing. And even in difficult situations, there's this light that you can bring to people that I think is really powerful from a shopping perspective. And so whether you're talking about it from an altruistic perspective as a brand, or you're commercial, you're interested in commercializing it, there is this place that it starts to come together.
That's awesome. Well, really, really appreciate the time that you've taken out to do this. This is fun, and so thank you for doing this, John.
I appreciate the invite. It's always an honor to come and connect with people and talk about the show.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks.